Ever been on a job interview and they say something or something happens in the interview and you just feel this reaction come over you? You get triggered and you can't figure it out what it is, but you're feeling like red flag, something's off, and you can't figure out what it is. I got asked about this today in my live podcast, and I think it's really important to walk this through because a lot of people are going through job interviews right now and sometimes having that reaction. As a 20-year career coaching veteran, it's my job to help you understand why you're having that feeling, but more importantly, what you should do about it. So let's get into it. And by the way, this will take more than 30 seconds to answer. So if you don't have the time, bookmark it and come back, okay? Because you don't want to be triggered and you don't want to make mistakes going forward if this happens to you. So you're in the interview, something happens, you feel triggered. The most important thing I want you to focus about in that moment is to remember now is not the time to react. You are in the interview in order to impress them. You're there trying to show them you are the must have candidate. So don't try to figure out what's wrong in the moment. Make a mental note. I felt triggered. And now move back to my job is to really show them I'm the must have candidate. Focus on all the things we teach you at Work It Daily to make sure that you are really differentiating yourself and making them see that you are the person that will save them money, make them money, solve their problems, alleviate their pain. They got to have you. Okay. Get through the interview. As soon as you do, though, I want you to go back and I want you to hold some space, some time, and mentally walk yourself through that interview to figure out exactly what point that reaction came, that trigger came. You need to think about where you were in the interview process. Was it something they asked you? Was it you giving a response and you saw a reaction out of them? And I want you to detail that scenario. And let me tell you why. So we have something called our ancient brain. Some people call it the reptilian brain. It's one of the oldest parts of our brain, and it was designed for us to do things like fight or flight. We codify every experience we have in our lives, every little micro experience, and we decide if it's positive, negative, or neutral. And we do that because back in the day, we had to protect ourselves to stay alive. Right? We had to, like, if we smelled something or sensed something, we might call it spidey senses, right? And so we have these spidey senses. We now live in a more evolved world, but communication is where that's all gone. And so your spidey senses, your ancient brain ticked off in that moment. It picked up on something. And you need to figure out exactly what that was. Now, what that means is that whatever they did, you've had a similar experience before and you didn't like the outcome. So maybe somebody said something similar to you before and it turned out to be a lie, something about that experience. There's no way you could have reacted to it if you didn't have a previous experience codified away that's making you trigger like that. Are we on the same page? Okay. So you really want to get to the bottom of it. Now you've got to stop yourself and go, okay, but that doesn't mean it's true. I've identified what past experience is triggering me and making me think it's the same experience. But I need to confirm that. I'm not just going to take that at face value. So if you go back on another interview with them, you're now going to have an opportunity to ask a question or two. When it's your turn, do you have any questions for us to really kind of get to the bottom of it? So let me give you an example. Let's say you're in the interview and they are talking a lot about work-life balance and it's a work-life balance company, blah, 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 blah. But then they're talking about a project that they were recently doing and you feel triggered. You're like, oh, they just talked about that. Something triggered me. And you come back and you listen. And what you heard was, oh, and we worked nights and we worked weekends and everybody sacrificed. And what you didn't realize in the moment was, that's not work-life balance. That's not what they were saying. They didn't tell the truth there, right? That's a trigger. So what you're going to want to do now when you go back on an interview is find your tactful way to say, what happens in this situation where, it mentioned to me in a previous interview that sometimes there's a project, it was nights and weekends. How does the company avoid that now? How do they make sure? Because, you talked about work-life balance, which I love. What are they doing to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? So now you can ask a question to try to get at it and see their reaction. And so if they've got a good answer, it's one thing. If they don't, well, now you're figuring some things out. So it's really important that when we get triggered, when the spidey senses go off, that we don't react in the moment. You want to crush that job interview, but you do then want to come back and use the techniques that I just shared to figure it out and then ask some clarifying questions going forward. Because remember, folks, as much as they're the customer, you're the business of one selling your services, when you get to the final round, it's up to you to decide whether you want to work there or not. And so you do have the right to figure these things out because you don't want to make a bad decision. We've all made the bad decision before and regretted working someplace, right? Lesson learned there. Hey, if you found this helpful, will you help me back? I have built a brand new free resource center. No credit card required, nothing. But I'm putting people inside there so that they can come to my live podcast, ask questions, get answers in real time. I also threw $1,000 worth of free resources in there, like my job search bootcamp, things to really help you jumpstart your career and your job search because I can't work with everybody one-on-one. So I would love it if you would join me inside this private community because it's a whole growing group of amazing people working together for free on their careers. And I want you to be a part of it. Okay. Good luck. Go get them.